are. I know the Lord has been merciful and good to me, and so I pray and believe that he has done the same for you. All right. Good evening, Kia. Welcome, welcome. So, as you are here, you have been, I don't know if it's your first time, if it's anybody's first time, in our Abundant Living Life Enrichment series. I want to welcome you. Um, my name is Pastor Paul Goodridge. I'm one of the associate pastors here at the Oakwood University Church, and I also facilitate one of the um, sessions here. It's good to see you. It's good to be with you. And I know we have some great presenters, great presentations in store for us. How you doing, Rosalind? David, I'm wondering if that's our intern, David. So if it is, welcome, welcome, welcome. All right. So I want to spend a few moments in prayer. Listen, if you do have any prayer requests, I would like you to just go ahead and put it in the chat. Just go ahead and put it in the chat. We want to be able to spend some time in prayer, and asking that the Lord will hear our prayer and answer our prayer according to his will for our good, but ultimately for his glory. So if you have any prayer requests, go ahead and put it in the chat. If not, we'll go ahead and spend some time in prayer. I'm starting to see the prayers, stronger spiritual relationship with Christ, um, future rebaptism, healthy nutrition, family situation. Yeah, the school year is coming up. I understand, David. I understand. Prayer for victory over dealing with a difficult person. Thank you for submitting your prayer requests, and not just me when I pray, but those of us who are on here, please, let's intercede on behalf of each other, one to another. All right, so let's bow our heads so we can have some time to pray. Father, we want to thank you so much for your grace and your mercy, for seeing us to another midweek Wednesday evening Abundant Living Life Enrichment series. Lord, you have blessed us in the past, and we are looking forward to what you will do for us and what you will say to us today and in the future. But Lord, as we are looking to live abundant lives, we recognize that for many of us, we are dealing with challenges that seem overwhelming, challenges that would seek to discourage us and distract us and dissuade us and ultimately destroy us. But Lord, you are able to deliver us. And so we're asking for you to do something that we cannot do. We're asking that you would look down in mercy upon every issue, every situation, every circumstance. I ask that you would open doors that nobody seems to be able to open, that you would close doors that nobody seems to be able to shut, that you would make ways out of no way, that you would provide where there seems to be no resources. Lord, we ask for answers where we just seem to be riddled with questions. We ask that you would give peace. We ask that you would give comfort. We ask that you would give strength. We ask that you would answer every issue that we have. Lord, within the chat, people are pouring out their hearts, they're pouring out their requests. And even before they typed, you knew. And so as we are just agreeing with these individuals and joining with them and interceding on behalf of them, we are thankful that you are a God who not only hears our prayer, but who is willing to move on our behalf. Lord, as we're about to go into our various groups, again, I ask that you would open our hearts and open our minds to receive your word, to receive your message, to receive your information. But more than that, more than just knowing and having information, may we put these principles into action. May we persevere where we need to. May we have the courage to make changes as we need to, so that we can live life more abundantly. Thank you for every presenter. Be with them, give them clarity of speech and clarity of thought. And when this session would have finished today, may we even now experience more abundant life. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, Christian should have opened the or have the rooms available. And so once he opens them up, then please feel free to go into your session of choice. I want to remind you, we have a participants guide that you can download if you go to our website, oucsda.org, and then from the website, go to the Watch tab, and then from Watch, click on Online and Virtual Services. I think it's Online Services, and then go halfway down the page, and you will see where you can not only log in to the Zoom meetings, but on the right of that, you will see where you can download the participants guide. That guide is for you to know a little bit more about the sessions and also give you an opportunity to take notes, etc. So enough of me talking here. Please go ahead and go into your sessions, and blessings to you.
All right, they're starting, joining Dynamic Health. Okay. Okay, we're going to get started with prayer. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the session. We are going to learn so much about abundant health. We're going to start with prayer. Shall we bow our heads? Father in heaven, we thank you so much for this temple that you have given us. Please bless us as we continue to learn how to take care of it, guide us and protect us, and help us as we learn more about the food and the body. For Jesus' sake and for his name, amen. Well, I am your moderator. I am so excited to be here with you. If you have any questions, you can place them in the chat here in Zoom, and I'm also monitoring YouTube for those of you who are on YouTube. So I'm so excited to be here with both groups. We have before us Donna and Eddie Goodman. They are owners of Lifestyle Therapeutic, a physical therapy and wellness center in Huntsville, where they are committed to helping people on their journey to better health. A graduate of Tuskegee University, Eddie is certified in health-focused patient management from the UAB School of Physical Therapy. This certificate equips him to incorporate healthier lifestyle options into the care of his patients, which is especially critical for them, most of whom are diabetic, hypertensive, heart disease, or arthritic patients. Donna graduated from Oakwood University and earned her master's in public health from Loma Linda. Her specialty is plant-powered nutrition, plant-powered cooking, and healthy lifestyle education, wellness coaching, including a point of purchase education. A 26-year breast cancer survivor. Congratulations. I saw it was your, what did you call it? Your
cancerversary.
Your cancerversary.
Yeah.
Give her a hand. A 26-year breast cancer survivor, Donna has authored 3 books on healthy living, available at lifestyletherapeutic.com. I will put that in this Zoom as well as in the YouTube. May I present to you my great friends, Donna and Eddie Goodman. But before I do, the most important thing in their lives is both Donna and Eddie have one son who is my heart and my former student, Ivy Goodman, Ivy Titus. So there you go.
Hey, y'all, I'm excited to see you this evening. We are literally going to be playing tag tonight as we have kind of changed the format for what we're doing. I'm going to start out with the food demonstration because I want it to be ready by the time the class is over. And so I'm going to do that now and show you some important steps. Karen is going to post the recipe in the chat. This recipe was from my first book, Something to Shout About, which is now available on our website as a hard copy or as an ebook. And it was one that I kind of walked into as I was learning how to eat differently than I had before. And it's a scalloped potato recipe. So if you like scalloped potatoes, then this will be something that you enjoy. Many times when we make scalloped potatoes, we're using milk to make a roux to go over it. And we have a variety of milks that you can use. Silk has come out with an amazingly delicious brand now that looks, smells, tastes like traditional dairy milk. Planet Oat makes a really good oat milk. My husband absolutely loves that. I like to use a vanilla soy milk sometimes, and I love to use coconut milk. So you have those as options. But what I'm going to do today, instead of using any of those, I'm going to use cashews to make a milk. And some of you may be familiar with recipes on how you can make your own milk, including oat milk, almond milk, rice milk, any of those, cashew milk. And the way that you make it is usually to just take about a cup of your favorite nut. I'm using raw cashews, and I used to buy them from the health food store, but so much has changed in the last 25 years. So I got these literally from Costco. You want to find the ones that are raw and not processed with added salt or added oil. But if you can only find the ones that are processed, get those and you can use them. I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it in my blender. And typically what you do is you take a cup of nuts and about 3 or 4 cups of water, and you blend it together if you're going to make milk that you want to drink. And then you add a little salt, maybe a little sweetener, and you have milk. If you don't like the bits that are in it, you can squeeze those out. But a lot of times you can blend it really smoothly, especially if you have a blender like this. What I like to do with mine is to add about a cup of water to get it started, because I want to make sure that all of the nuts are blended well and smoothly. And so we're going to do that now. Okay, for the sake of time, I've just done it for about 30, 35 seconds. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to flavor it and add some more liquid to it. Here's where you can become creative. If you like garlic powder, onion powder, you can add that to it. I'm going to use McKay's chicken style as my primary seasoner. And of course you can play, to taste however you want it. And I'm not going to add garlic powder or onion powder this time because I'm going to put fresh garlic and fresh onion in it. If you like this young lady, you could use something like this to season it. If you like Caribbean, you could use a jerk curry or a curry flavoring. If you like Cajun seasoning, you could make it so that it tastes like Cajun. And I have found this amazing South African smoke that is absolutely delicious. I was cruising some site online and the girls were talking about it, and I've gotten it from Trader Joe's. And this is something that you could also use if you wanted to. Not sure, you could probably get it on Amazon, but we have a Trader Joe's here in town and they got some more on the shelf, so you could use that too. I'm just going to use the McKay's, and I'm going to add some non-dairy sour cream to mine. And then I'm going to add some more water to it so that we end up with about 3 cups of fluid here to go on top of the potatoes when they're done. Now, a lot of times I add more water to it than the original recipe is that is being posted in the chat because of the number of people that I'm serving. But if you follow that recipe, you should be good. Now I'm going to reblend it.
So while she's doing that, I'm in the process of uploading the recipe.
Okay.
I'm having a little challenges with it. I got it on the device, but it won't seem to be uploaded to Zoom. And what she has is 4 medium white potatoes, washed, peeled, and sliced, 1 small onion chopped, 1 cup of vegan cheddar cheese that melts, it's grated, some chives, and your cream sauce. I heard you say it. It's 2 cups of water, 1 cup of clean raw cashews, 2 tablespoons of McKay's no MSG chicken seasoning, and a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. Nutritional yeast flakes are optional.
Okay, so what I have here is that beautiful pan that we used last week when I was cooking, and I have already cut up my potatoes. And the recipe calls for about 4 medium potatoes, but my family has fallen in love with red potatoes, which are kind of sweet, and yellow Yukon Gold potatoes, which are buttery tasting. And when we make potato salad or scalloped potatoes, if we make mashed potatoes, we use a combination of these because we like the flavor. So what I'm going to do now is literally take some of these potatoes that have been soaking in water, and they were only soaking in water because I was doing this class. If I was just cooking it for my family, I would literally cut them up and just put them in the pan. So we're going to put about half the potatoes in the pan. You could use a skillet like this. And one of the reasons that I like to use iron skillets is because of the health benefit with the food as it absorbs the iron. It'll probably be harder to absorb iron in this one because it's ceramic lined, but in addition to it being healthy for you if it's unlined as far as giving you the iron, is the way that it conducts heat is absolutely amazing. Okay, so that's about half the potatoes in there. And this is a combination of the red and the yellow. And the next thing that I'm going to do is take my onions and garlic. I have about 4 or 5 cloves of garlic and some fresh red onion. I like the red onion flavor. You could use whichever one you like. So I'm going to sprinkle that here in the center. And then I'm going to add some non-dairy cheese. And I'll probably put about 2/3 of the cheese, 3/4 of the cheese in the center like this. And then I'll save the rest for the top. You can use whatever kind of cheese you like. There are a variety of plant-based cheeses on the market, all kind of flavors. Choose which one you and your family enjoy and use that. Then I'm going to add the rest of the potatoes on top. Easy peasy. Any questions popping up, Karen?
No questions. I posted the recipe.
Okay.
Hold on. Oh, okay. So I do have one question. So I have an allergy to nuts.
Okay.
What else can be used?
Okay, if you have an allergy to nuts, I would make a roux out of flour and margarine and milk. And if you don't want to use the margarine, you literally could put your milk in the blender, probably about 2 cups of milk with about 2 tablespoons of flour or cornstarch or arrowroot, and blend that up, and that will thicken as you cook with it to make a creamy sauce over it. This recipe that uses the cashew milk, the cashew milk is going to thicken as it cooks. So now I have that done. I'm going to pour the milk over it. This has got to be one of the easiest recipes there is.
So I've been able to post the recipe to YouTube, but because of character limitations, it's in 3 sections. So the recipe's on YouTube. But that looks so good, Donna. Where do I get raw nuts? Because, raw cashews. I always see cashews in the store.
Oh, yeah. These are the ones that I got from Costco. Organic, whole, unsalted, unroasted nuts. And of course, if you go to the health food store, they always have them. All right, now I'm going to put the rest of the cheese on top of this. And I'm going to spread it out. And then I love parsley and chives. And if you wanted to add paprika to this, you could, but I'm going to add some parsley. And then I'm going to add some chives. And in our culture, they like paprika. So if you want to put paprika, you could. And if you wanted to, you could actually use a smoked paprika, which would be delicious. Another thing that you might like to use is bacon bits, and that would be really nice on top of here too. And y'all, this is it. This is all you have to do to it. So now what I'm going to do is cover it with this top, and I'm going to put it in the oven. And by the time we're done, we should have some scalloped potatoes for you to see. Okay, so I'm about to put this in the oven. Y'all chat for a second, and I'll be right back.
You can take it out.
So are there any questions? I'm noticing just as a reminder, the full recipe is in the chat. Please feel free to cut and paste it. Your computer, sometimes you might be afraid that you'll lose it, then take a picture. You can take your phone and take a picture of it. That way you'll know where it is. And thank you. I forgot, you can find raw cashews at Sprouts also.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Almost back in place. And then we'll get started.
So one question I have here, Donna, is there a health benefit to plant-based cheese? What exactly is the health benefits of plant-based cheese?
We're probably going to touch a lot more on that. Let me get this situated. So when I come back, it'll be straight.
Oh, what temperature and how long? What temperature is it at and how long?
350 to 400 until they're tender.
Okay.
Is usually how I do it. Okay, so the benefit of the non-dairy cheese is that it has no animal fat, no cholesterol, and it's made from plants. It could be from coconut milk, it could be from peas, it could be from rice. There are a lot of cheeses that start out that way. And what it brings with them are healthy fats and something called phytochemicals that we're going to talk about shortly. And if you all can hang with me till we get there, we will have the answers for you. Okay. Got ready to get started. And here we go. Whatsoever you eat or drink or whatsoever you do all to the glory of God is what we're recommending. This week, like we have said, we're going to have the Great Physician's Prescription. You already cooked up good health, and then my husband Eddie is going to get physical with some information for you. One of the things that I shared with you at our first session was that when we think about health, we want to think about it from God's perspective and wholeness. I see a hand. Evelyn Hines has a question. Maybe it was answered.
Hello. Yeah. Hello.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I had what I just ended up in the hospital with heart failure. My ejection fraction 35 to 40%. I've been eating basically plant-based exercise. However, I've had thyroid and high blood pressure for years, and then kidney. I don't know what happened. 2 months ago, I had everything cleared, and then 2 months later, I end up with heart failure. What can I do?
I think if you pay attention to some of these specifics tonight, there might be some information for you. And if you'd like to email me personally at ltxclinic@gmail.com, I'd be happy to respond with some and point you in the right direction.
LTX Clinic.
At
putting it in the
gmail.com. And
Are
you
you
putting
putting
it
it
in
in
the
the chat?
Yes, I'm putting it in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
No
So
problem.
what we want is for God to make us whole. We don't want to just, be well according to what the world says. We want what the Bible says about it. And I hope our friends from Atlanta have joined us tonight. We spoke to them earlier today. I live here in Alabama. We are the 45th healthiest state in the union. That means that we're at the bottom of the totem pole. We have the highest increase nationally in obesity, the second heaviest state in the nation. And when you look at the things that are killing us in the state of Alabama, it's heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, and then we have a lot of sexually transmitted diseases in our state, which tells you that people are having sex without protection. And a lot of times when I'm treating or talking to patients about an action that they are doing that perhaps isn't so healthy, I try less to focus on that action and get to what is at the bottom of it. Because if you're willing to take a risk for getting a disease, an STD, or knowing that it's better for you not to be overweight, but you continue to eat, then there's something else that's going on that also needs to be addressed. So we like to get at the root of the matter. There's enough research now and scientific information that connects dietary choices to health outcomes, especially when it comes to coronary heart disease, diabetes, cancer, those sorts of things. And we spoke last week about the fact that Exodus 15:26, when you look at it another way and look at the diseases that the Egyptians had, it was the very same diseases that we're having now. And we connect that to the lifestyle choices that they were making. In order for us to know what it is the best plan for us to follow, we really have to look at what God said. And you remember, I keep saying that God is science. And tonight, as Eddie and I talk, you're going to see some things from his perspective that he designed for our bodies that are scientifically sound. When Adam and Eve were created, he said, I have given you. And I really enjoy reading scripture to see what God says. He says, I wish above all things that you would prosper and be in good health. That means Donna and Eddie and Karen and all of you. If you, I've never seen the righteous forsaken or his seed. That would be Karen and Eddie and David and my children, our seed begging for bread. So when you see this, behold, I have given you, he was talking to Adam and Eve initially, and this word also applies to us. I have given you every herb yielding seed, every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for food. That's what was given to us before sin. And after sin, he added the herb of the field. This might be a picture that you'd like to take a picture of on your screen so that you can go back and look at it. But when we look at God speaking to people in the Bible, in the Garden of Eden, he was clear about what they were to eat. And that equates to fruits, nuts, and grains. Then after the fall, he introduced vegetables to them. It wasn't until 2,000 years after creation and the fall, after the fall, when he destroyed the earth by a flood and they came out of the boat and all the greenery and everything was gone. And so some of the animals that he had brought with him in the boat, God said, now you have permission to eat those animals. But when you look at Genesis 9, God is clear that you're only to eat the clean animals and that you should never, ever, ever eat the fat. And my husband and I were talking about this recently, because when you think about animals and fat, you kill the animal, or you go to the grocery store, you buy the animal, and we take off the skin from the chicken, which is the fat, and we try to move the other fat. But the other part of the fat of the animal is milk, which is made into butter and ice cream and yogurt and cheese. And God has said that for all your generations, you should never eat the fat of the animal. Then when you look in Leviticus 3:17, he says that it shall be a perpetual thing for you and all your generations, that you will not supposed to eat the fat or the blood. The blood is the life of the animal, and that carries anything that the animal has. Then, of course, in Leviticus 11, there's a discussion of all the different animals. The vegetarian animals are the ones that it's okay to eat, and the non-vegetarian animals are the ones who eat up all the dirt on the earth and in the water. After the children of Israel were delivered from Egypt, they're out there in the wilderness, and God decides to send them manna, which is called angel's food. And they say it looks like coriander, those of you who cook with coriander. And he gave them quail, and they just begged and begged and begged, and he gave it to them. And listen, they literally ate so much of it that they choked on it and died. And then they rejected what God had given them. When we look in Isaiah, prophetically, he's talking about what it's going to be like in heaven. And when we go to Revelation, it says that the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nation. And so we don't have to wonder about what God says that we know is best for these human machines that he has created. And if you take a minute and look at it, it will clearly explain all that to you. So then why is it that God decided to give us plant foods? Well, because he created us, and he knew that nature supplied them abundantly. They're available. The nuts are excellent as a food. Olives can supply the place of butter and flesh and act as a laxative. Rice, wheat, corn, oats as whole grains contain fiber, which is beneficial to everything. My husband, we put net over our peach tree this year, and babe, it's probably like 30 or 40 peaches out there that we are going to actually be able to pick and use this year. And for every season around the world, wherever you live, God has made all these plant foods, because that's what actually gives you the best health. When we look at vegetarians versus non-vegetarians, some of this information that I'm sharing now was way before the vegan movement and the total plant-based movement. And this was done by the Adventist Health Study at Loma Linda University. And when you eat a diet that is animal-based, you have things like saturated fat, trans fatty acid, cholesterol, refined carbs, things that stress the body, and animal protein. All of those things are damagers to the body. But when you lean closer to a diet that is plant-based, the fiber, the good fats, the phytochemicals, the antioxidants. I call the antioxidants. Have you ever been to a family reunion? Everybody's happy to see each other, and one of the relatives invariably shows up, and he's just kind of all over the place, just, setting stuff off. And then there's another relative who's able to come in and calm that person down. That's what an antioxidant does in our body. Okay? Y'all got the picture, right?
So
go ahead.
Let me ask you this. So I have someone with MS. Would this be something that happens in the body to a MS patient?
Yeah. Because you have problems with the myelin sheath. And the thing is, sometimes it's not just like the lady who asked questions at the very beginning. When I talk to her privately, I'll share some stuff. But sometimes we're eating well, but we're stressed. Stress can really, really do some damage. And you probably have done well longer than you normally would have because you're eating well. But when you're eating well, you remove that stress from the system, and then you're able to address the other things. And in my own situation with breast cancer, I was under a lot of stress, and I had to honestly look at it and make some changes. You have things called plant sterols that block cholesterol absorption, and salicylic acid is what Tylenol is made out of. And it's an anti-inflammatory that's found in fruits and vegetables and spices and herbs. And it literally helps to alleviate pain in the body without you even realizing that it's happening. When it comes to gallstones, if you're vegetarian, you have lower obesity rates, higher fiber intake, and lower consumption of fats and refined sugar. So you're not going to get gallstones. Kidneys disease and kidney stones also respond better to a vegetarian diet because there's less protein, less saturated fat and cholesterol. You have a third to a half as much hypertension, which is the second leading cause of chronic kidney failure. And kidney failure is something that we used to teach. Once you got it, it was there forever. But we have stories, and we're praying with some people now that God will reverse it as they get rid of the cause and stop treating the symptom. When it comes to gastrointestinal diseases and rheumatoid arthritis, if you're a vegetarian, the Adventist Health Study saw a 50% reduction in people who were on a vegetarian diet. And if you put people on a total plant-based diet, it would get even better. The swelling was better, the stiffness was better, there was more fiber in the diet, so it was hard for things to go wrong inside of the intestine. And of course, you have less constipation and more diverticulitis. That was one of the things that my husband and I learned when we went this way, how much easier it was for our bowels to move. So what about our dietary choices? We don't want to eat a bunch of flour. If we use baking powder or baking soda, we want to use the baking powder that does not have aluminum in it, which is harmful. And baking soda literally kills B vitamins. So you kind of want to stay away from that. You want to use bread that's made with water instead of milk, unless you're on a plant-based diet, because plant milk is beneficial compared to animal milk. You want to make sure you're cooking your grains thoroughly. A lot of people start to eat more whole grains and they think they can cook them as quickly as they can the white grains, and you can't do that. The butter is a fat straight from the animal, so it's best not to use that. It's important to use less sugar, and always avoid the combination of dairy milk and sugar because it becomes alcoholic-like once it's digested in the system. So what are we supposed to eat if we're not supposed to do this? We want to eat whole grains. If you can see at the top of the screen there's a picture of a grain of wheat. And on the very, very center is the germ. The white part is the endosperm. The outside part is the bran. And then there's the husk on the very outside. This is the best way to eat grains, whole grains. There are a lot of people now who are experiencing gluten intolerance, gluten allergies, gluten sensitivity. We are thinking that it's less about the gluten and more about the fact that they have modified the wheat that we eat from what it used to be like, and they may use pesticides in it. So if you can find an ancient grain of wheat and or one that has been grown that is non-GMO and is pesticide free, you probably don't see the same type of response. And the reason you want to eat the whole grain is because God has placed all the nutritive value that we need in the whole grain. And when they take away the germ in the center and the bran on the outside, we have this white part, the endosperm, which is mostly starchy, but it doesn't have any of the helpful oils and phytochemicals that are in the whole grain. So you want to eat whole brown rice, whole grain pasta, whole grain grits for that matter. But I'm talking to Black and brown people. If you're American, you're eating grits. If you are Caribbean, you're eating porridge. You want the kind that is the whole grain that has all the specks in it, because that's where the miracle working power is. And that's what swells when it gets to your intestine, which we're going to look at in a minute.
Before you move, let's go back to that slide. I have a question.
Okay.
My aunt says that her doctor told her to stop eating rice and wheat, and she found her arthritis improved. What's the problem with those foods? I have read and heard that corn causes inflammation. Is that true for everyone or only some folks for whom corn may trigger this response?
There are some people who have arthritis that are triggered by those foods, but I would check to see if she was eating processed flour and bread and rice, then yes, I could see it being a problem. But if she were eating the whole grain type, it shouldn't be a problem. The second thing I would want to know is she on a totally plant-based diet? Because when you're not on a totally plant-based diet, remember last week we talked about inflammation. You're eating all these animal products, so your body is in this constant sense of inflammation, which means that it can't settle down and do what it's supposed to do. So a lot of times our patients will come off the animal products, the dairy, the sugar, the processed foods, the inflammation goes down, and then they're able to eat the whole foods that the Creator designed for us. If you literally have an allergy, then you want to look for some other things that you can do instead of that.
Okay, thank you.
Your immune system. We talked about the fiber and the bread and everything. On sugar, because a lot of times we jump to meat and we leave out sugar. God has placed this immune system in our body that does an amazing job of being an alarm to let us know that something's not right. And these blood cells, the phagocytes, chew up invading organisms, and the lymphocytes help the body to remember what was there, so that if it's exposed to it again, like when you get the flu, it will respond to it and fight it. Well, if you are one of those people who like to eat a lot of sugar, I'm talking processed white sugar and a lot of even the not so processed white sugar, a lot of it, you can have some challenges. A study was done at Loma Linda University where they took students in a room and they asked them some questions. And then what they decided to do was to draw blood, look at the white blood cells to see how many bacteria the white blood cells could kill. So they did it without giving them any sugar at all. And every single one of the white blood cells could kill 14 bacteria. Then they started adding sugar to them, and then they would check their blood. And the more sugar they added, the less capable the body was of fighting off the bacteria. 24 teaspoons of sugar is what you find in a banana split. 12 teaspoons of sugar is what you find in a can of soda. And so those of us who on the holiday we're eating, the big gulp ones, or we go out to get ice cream and we get all of that sugar is weakening the body's alarm system so that it's not able to fight things that it approaches, and before you know it, you get sick.
Okay, so I have a question, which is perfect. Is it best to avoid all sugar, or are you just talking about refined sugar? What about organic cane juice?
Because the thing is, sweet is not the enemy. Sweet is not the enemy. It's the processed sweet that's the enemy. When you eat a mango, when you eat pineapple, if you take a piece of bread and put it in your mouth, whole grain bread, and hold it, it will start to digest in your mouth, and it'll start breaking down to glucose, and it'll taste sweet. We have taken green beans out of the garden and started to eat them raw. When you hold it in your mouth, that salivary amylase starts to break down the carbs that are in there, and it becomes sweet to your mouth. So sweet's not the problem. It's taking the sugar away from its original source, which is sugar cane, and pouring it on top of our cereal and, eating it like we ain't got no sense. That's when it causes the problem, literally. So it's already messed with our immune system. And then when you are eating a lot of sugar, for those of you who are dealing with heart disease, maybe plant-based, but love sugar, it changes the pumping mechanism in your heart, and it can increase your risk for heart failure.
What about substitutes? The substitutes, Donna, like stevia, is that allowed, or is it all the same?
No, stevia and monk fruit, don't do that. It's white sugar.
Okay.
White sugar does it. It also raises the fats in the body, which is going to thicken the blood, and it promotes hardening of the arteries. And so a lot of people, I'm going to give up red meat, I'm going to give up pork, I only eat chicken and fish every once in a while, but you love sugar, and you add sugar, and you put in sugar, and literally that's what it's doing inside the system. It increases the risk of cancer, it increases the rates of recurrence of cancer, and it decreases the survival rates afterwards. And where do we find the sugar? This right here is so amazing to me. It blows my mind every time I see it. The amount of teaspoons that you find and stuff. And then as you look at these foods, and how many of these foods do you eat in a day? So that you're adding up all of the teaspoons of sugar that your body has gotten. And then you wonder why your head is hurting, or why you can't get rid of this yeast infection, or your children are experiencing allergies, or the doctor says that something's happening with your heart. It's because of the way that the sugar separated from the food that God put it in is affecting the body. But you asked the question, Karen, about the substitutes. The Bible says to eat honey because it is good, and the honeycomb, which is sweet to the taste. Just don't eat too much honey. People who are vegan are moving from the perspective of they don't want to harm animals. And because bees are involved in this, they really don't think you should eat honey. But the Bible, the creator, the great physician says, eat the honey. Just don't eat too much. And we are discovering that it has so many amazing capacities. How often should we eat? We need to eat so that there are 5 to 6 hours between our meals, because when we eat something and it goes down the esophagus and it hits the stomach is there waiting for it, and it starts to digest it. If you eat breakfast at 7 o'clock and then at 10 o'clock you start to eat something else, and then at 12 o'clock you eat something, and then you have a snack at 3, and then you have dinner at 6, and then you eat something before you go to bed. Every single time that you introduce something else to your tummy, the digestion stops to accept the new food. And so this whole thing now about intermittent fasting is what the creator intended for us to do. Eat a good breakfast, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. 5 to 6 hours later, all your food will be digested. Eat a good second meal. 5 to 6 hours later, it should be time for you to take an evening walk and get ready to go to bed. And then overnight, your stomach is able to rest instead of doing all this work through the night, and your blood sugars are crazy in the morning, and you have heartburn and everything else is happening, because we were designed to eat about 2 meals per day, 2 to 3 times a day. The biblical examples are the children of Israel as they went through the wilderness. Twice a day the food came. With Elijah, twice a day the food came. And if we adapt that, we will see some real improvement in a whole lot of things. Eat slowly, not after a bunch of exercise. Don't overeat, and definitely don't eat before bedtime. Then, why do we not want to eat meat? Because it shortens the life. Cancer, tumors, tuberculosis are largely caused by meat eating. There's a disease of the animal. And then people want to know about fish, but it's really not any better. Then you have this whole group of people who are moving from the perspective of we don't want to harm the animals. And biblically, if you eat according to the Bible, you decide, oh, I'm going to eat this. Okay, Miss Donna. All right. Well, then you need to eat it the way that God said to eat it. And we had a patient in Atlanta who worked in a slaughterhouse. And he said the difference between the kosher side and the non-kosher side was so stark. The animals on the non-kosher side screaming, hollering, terrified, full of disease. The animals on the kosher side, music playing very calmly. They had no idea they were about to die, so they were not mistreated. Their neck was just slit. The heart kept beating. It beat the blood out of the system. And that's the way that God intended for us to eat meat when he gave us permission. But remember, the permission came because the flood had wiped out everything on the earth. So it's nothing that you have to do forever. This is a stark reminder of what happened after the flood. Up until the flood, people were living almost 1,000 years. When Noah came out of the flood, and God said, okay, you can eat these animals now. This is how you eat them. In one generation, from Noah living 950 years to Shem only living 600 years, we lost 350 years. 350 years just by the start of the consumption of animal products. And we have continued to go down over the years. And it's not anything that has to be, because when you move from an animal diet to a plant-based diet, there's something in your system called telomeres that determine how long you're going to live. And when you are just killing them with poor diet and stress and tobacco and alcohol and all that sort of stuff, you shorten the telomeres. So you shorten your life. But when you make the lifestyle changes, you literally start to lengthen the telomeres, and then you can live. The American Dietetic Association is on board now. You do not have to worry that you are getting all the nutrients. You will get all the nutrients that you need. They used to say that a serving was 2 to 3 ounces per day. And if years ago, when we were growing up, they weren't sure that you could get all the nutrients, so they told you to combine foods. You don't have to do that anymore, because God has put everything in the food that you need. This is a picture of a variety of plant foods, and you can see to the right what we call essential amino acids. These build up protein. And when you have to have an essential amino acid, you have to eat the food that provides it. And we've been taught for years that you can only get it in animal products. Well, guess what? That's not true. So you can see how much of it on the bottom right recommended for all of those essential amino acids. That's all you need every single day. That's it. And you have met the requirement. If you were to sit down to a meal of brown rice with sweet potato and some beans on top of it and some corn on the cob and maybe a salad that has broccoli and tomatoes in it and a whole wheat roll, each of those foods would provide the amount of amino acids that you see here on the chart. That would probably be like 60 times what you need every day. And you have not put a piece of meat, any milk, any cheese, any eggs, none of that in your system. Because God, the creator, knew the kind of protein that you needed, and the best way to get it would be from plant foods. What about the minerals when you're eating a plant-based diet? Here we compare oats to beef. Same amount of iron, but magnesium, calcium, potassium, and phosphorus far outweighs any amount that you could get from an animal. Don't need it. What about when you're eating processed meat? It all increases the risk of death, stroke, heart disease, lung disease because of the inflammation, colorectal cancer, bladder cancer, prostate cancer. You don't need it. It's killing us. The World Health Organization a couple years ago suggested that 50-gram portion, which is less than 2 ounces, increases the risk of cancer 18%. And they have what we call carcinogenic categories. And carcinogenic means stuff like tobacco. Hot dogs, bacon, ham, sausage, and cold cuts are now equal to tobacco as a carcinogen. And they're saying that red meat, and we used to think that red meat was only beef, but red meat is beef, pork, and lamb, and it literally is probably carcinogenic as well. When you're eating foods like bacon, the nitrates and nitrites that are in them, the high temperatures, all increase the risk for developing disease. This is one of the stories that interested me so much. A 6-year study of men in Oakland, California. They couldn't understand why the Black people out there, the men, had such high rates of prostate cancer. And then they did a food recall. And when they did the food recall, they were comparing Black men to white men. The Black men was eating chicken wings, chicken legs, chicken breast, fried chicken, you name it. And there's a substance in the chicken that goes directly to the prostate and starts to mess with the prostate and increases your risk for prostate cancer and, of course, raising your PSA.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Then the other thing with consumption of meat is, years ago, we were taught, just bake it, don't fry it. Well, there's fat inside the meat unless you're eating kosher. And every time you heat that meat, every time you heat it, you activate carcinogens. So if you're going to take the chicken and bake it, you've activated carcinogens. But if you take the chicken and batter it and you're going to fry it, you're going to activate carcinogens. But if you put it on the grill and you're using charcoal, you're going to activate the carcinogens. The fat's going to drop down into the charcoal to activate more carcinogens that come up to the chicken, and it's more carcinogens. And if you want it crispy, there are more carcinogens, because God never intended that that's what we're supposed to do. Literally, benzopyrene is a carcinogen that's found in cigarettes. And when you charcoal broil a steak, a 2-pound one, you have the exact amount of benzopyrene in the steak that you find in 600 cigarettes. And people think, well, that's a lot of cigarettes. How could you do that? 20 in a pack. If you do 3 packs a day, that's 60 a day, right? And 60 times 10 is 600. So in 10 days, you could consume benzopyrene from 600 cigarettes, or you could have it when you do 1 steak on the grill. It's amazing. Colon cancer, definitely related. And that's an easy one to understand. All the journals are talking about it. You don't have to worry about it. And a diet rich that's high in dairy products during childhood is associated with a greater risk of colorectal cancer in adulthood. It is also linked to breast cancer. Were you vegetarian, Karen, at the beginning?
No,
okay.
I was not. I was
Karen wasn't veggie, but I was veggie, lacto-ovo vegetarian. And they're suggesting here that they're finding that the increased risk of consumption of animal fat also increases your risk for getting breast cancer, including non-cancerous or benign breast conditions like fibroid adenomas and fibrocystic breast disease. And then you add to that the consumption of caffeine, which changes the breast tissue as well. And usually, if you're eating caffeine from chocolate, there's milk in it and there's fat in there as well, which is also going to cause a problem. So the more meat that you eat, the higher the risk of breast cancer. The lower amount of meat you eat, the lower the risk of breast cancer. And this one was very interesting to me, that the consumption of meat and dairy increases your risk of ovarian cancer. And we all know, for Black and brown people around the world, literally, we're allergic to dairy because we don't have lactase. But the lactose in milk also agitates the ovary and can cause ovarian cancer, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and just a lot of period issues for women. And when I stopped eating all that stuff, I got over it. Where do we get this saturated fat? In the places that God told us not to eat. Whole milk, hamburgers, mac and cheese that's made with milk and cheese, vanilla ice cream and yogurt. These are the primary sources of the fat in the diet that get inside the system and cause a bunch of problems. And all you have to do is stop eating it, and you can see a change. The omega-3 fats, however, are really important to the body because they decrease all of the risk of heart disease, cancer, diabetes. And they make you think that the only places you can get them is in animal products, but you don't have to. You can find them in other sources that we'll see in a minute. In addition, when you don't get the good omega-3 fats, these are some other things. We were talking earlier, Karen, about mentally not feeling good when you don't eat right. If you're not getting the good kind of fat, then you can experience this, because it's like a greased machine. God got down in the dirt with his hands and he created everything. He told the heart to beat this way. He said, I want the vessels to stay a certain way. I'm going to make sure that her hips are wider so she can have babies. All these sorts of stuff are not willy-nilly. God did it with intention. And when we're not doing it, it's a problem. So people will say, well, let's go ahead and just eat some fish. The challenge with eating fish is that it's expensive. It's still high in cholesterol. Too much of it will cause a vitamin overloading for vitamins that are found soluble in fat. And then the other thing is the bottom one. Toxins acquired from contaminated waters concentrate in the fatty tissues of fish. So this little picture here just makes so much sense to me. You're sitting on the dock of the bay going fishing because, you know, we live in the country and that's what people do. And you're fishing and you're going to get some bass maybe. Well, if the fish in the water has eaten the phytoplankton, which is the greenery that's there, and there is some poison in the water, it's not going to bother the fish so much. Then you have a carnivorous fish or a carnivorous human who eats it, and the higher up the food chain you go, these poisons are magnified in the fat in your system, and it causes some problems. So that's another reason not to do it. And then, of course, we know that all the stuff that goes on, faulty septic systems and, you know, all of that is another reason not to think about it. The best places to get this kind of good fat are from these sources. And one of the best sources, Karen, is flaxseed oil or just flax seeds. You don't have to separate the oil from it to get the good omega-3 fats, which help to keep the blood vessels healthy and not harden up. You can make a smoothie and put that in there. You can put it in bread, however you want to do it. Those are options, but it's not just in nuts. It's also in things like potatoes and cucumbers and sweet potatoes and California avocado, because God knew everybody wasn't going to be able to get flaxseed. But he knew some of you would have a garden and you could grow some cucumbers or some sweet potatoes or some turnips and turnip greens, and it would be there for you. And so that makes the difference. There's some other diseases that you get when you're eating these animal products that put you at risk. The one that really blew my mind were prions. And these are substances that are found in animals, and they literally cannot be killed. They can be, you try to sterilize them, freeze them, dry them, kill them at high temperatures, and they just don't die. It's like, it's horrible. And so The challenge is if you've been exposed to it, you won't know you had it until you die and they get to look at your brain. And so we want to consider that when we're thinking about whether we're going to make the change with the meat. The symptoms, of course, are very similar to Alzheimer's and dementia. And so there's question in the lifestyle medicine community as to whether people who are experiencing dementia and dementia-like disorders are actually experiencing it, or if they're experiencing what we now know is called mad cow disease. And again, you can't find out until you're dead and they can look at the brain and see if indeed that's what you actually had. And so that's a consideration too. Okay, Eddie, in our clinic, he sees a lot of patients and he literally is going to describe for you now these diseases of occlusion. And that's what you probably would be experiencing and can be reversed if you make the choice to change.
Hey there, folks. What my wife has been talking about over this entire session has been talking about what happens when we consume certain things such as your fats and your cholesterol, saturated fat. One of the things that we specialize in lifestyle therapeutics is diabetic and peripheral neuropathy and chemotherapy-induced neuropathy, those who have had chemotherapy treatments. The occlusive diseases are diseases that we see every day that are the result of the collection of cholesterol and saturated fat within our arteries throughout the body. Hypertension, I wish I had a picture that I could show you that talks about how hypertension is a collection of cholesterol and saturated fat throughout the body. Coronary artery disease is that collection of fat and cholesterol that is within the coronary arteries. Peripheral diabetic neuropathy, that is where, as you can see on the right-hand side of that screen, that artery on the right is a artery that is clogged with cholesterol and saturated fat. That comes only from what we eat. Animal products do not have saturated fat. I'm sorry, vegetable products, plant products do not have saturated fat and cholesterol. PVD, peripheral vascular disease. PAD, peripheral artery disease. Erectile dysfunction, when many of the men that come to our clinic who are suffering with diabetic or peripheral neuropathy, it's because they have a clogging of the arteries of the lower extremities. If those lower extremity arteries are clogged, that means that the arteries going into the penis are also clogged. And 90% of the men or more that come in with neuropathy are also having problems with erectile dysfunction. Kidney disease. We talked to 2 people this past week that are talking about what can I do about my kidney disease. The kidney has arteries that are going from the heart into the kidney. And just like all the arteries throughout the body have been clogged, those arteries going into the kidney, they can clog as well. And they can cause stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 kidney disease. And when we begin the process of not putting in as much of those animal products, the body now is able to begin to cleanse itself and reverse that process. We can go to the next screen, Ms. Goodman. Vascular disease. This is what we're talking about. This is a close-up view of that particular slide. My artery is on the left. My wife and I do not consume anything that comes from the animal. So everything we consume does not clog the arterial system. But the artery on the right, that artery is clogged with plaque. And plaque consists of cholesterol and saturated fat that comes only from animal products. That includes all of your meats. People say chicken and fish has less. No, chicken and fish have less blood. But the research that I have found in several studies shows that the amount of cholesterol and saturated fat in chicken and fish is the same as red meat. So if you're trying to get rid of cholesterol and saturated fat, it's all meats. Red meat just has more blood. Why? Because they call it red meat. It just has more blood. But the cholesterol and saturated fat is exactly the same. Next screen, please. So when we talk about the complications that result from an influx of cholesterol and saturated fat. Diabetes is not as much a problem with sugar. It is about processing, but the clogging of the interstitial cells. The cells are clogged so that the glucose cannot go from the bloodstream into the cells, so it stays in the blood, and therefore your blood sugar levels are high, your glucose levels are high. When you unclog the system of the cholesterol and the saturated fat, now the cells have been opened, and the blood sugar now can go from the bloodstream into the cells, into the body to function so that you can get the energy that you need. Heart disease, of course, peripheral vascular disease. These are the things that happen as a result of a person taking in too much cholesterol, saturated fat. My wife mentioned about the concentration of sugar, those 12 tablespoons, 16 tablespoons, 24 tablespoons of sugar. When you deal with arthritis, that is a system, that's a process where the immune system is impeded. The immune system is hindered. The immune system is hampered. And arthritis is usually a first response to the situation when you have too much sugar within the body. It causes problems with our immune system, and arthritis is a strong result. Last page. Last slide, Ms. Goodman. The prescription that we use when we talk about patients who come into our clinic, we ask them, first of all, are they willing to faithfully follow God's plan for healthy living?
Mhm.
When a patient comes in, we want to share with them that their body is not their own. They are stewards. We are all stewards of our body. Your body is not your own. If I was going on vacation and I wanted someone to use my car while I was gone, they would have to put in that car what I asked them to, so that when I got back, my car would still be there, because they used the right kind of oil, the right kind of gas, the right kind of filters. If I asked them to take care of my car while I was gone, when I come back, I want to be able to have my car running just fine, because they only put into that car what I asked them to. And the good Lord knows what's best for our bodies, and He wants us to put in what He asked for. So when a patient comes, I want to do, first of all, a good sensory evaluation where I find out about that neuropathy, how much sensation they're able to feel in the bottom of their feet and in the lower legs. I check to see if they can tell between hot and cold temperatures, because one of the things I'll be doing is working on hydrotherapy treatments, putting their feet into warm and into cool water. Dynamic balance training. Many times our patients who have neuropathy, they can't feel the floor because their feet are numb. Their feet feel thick. Sometimes there's tingling or burning or pins and needles. Those are the sensations that people have in their feet, because the blood is not getting down and the oxygen is not getting down to the nerves. And it's a condition called hypoxia. Hypoxia is a deprivation of oxygen to the nerves and to the tissues that are in the lower extremities and other parts of the body. So they can't feel the floor, and they have unstable balance, both in static, while they're standing still. If they close their eyes, they'd probably fall. Or when they're walking, they have to have a wide gait because they can't feel the floor well, and they feel uncomfortable when they're walking along, and they usually have to have a cane. So we give them a full sensory, thermal, and dynamic balance assessment, and we allow them then to begin to take on the hydrotherapy treatments that we provide. And my wife will provide a wellness consultation. Next slide, please.
So before we go into that slide,
Yes,
one
ma'am.
question: would fibromyalgia fit into any of the categories you talked about?
Fibromyalgia, what we have found, and based upon research and upon our clinical experience, fibromyalgia is many times a very emotional packed situation where you find that a person is under lots of stress, whether it's familial, whether it's job, whether it's something within the person's lifestyle. Fibromyalgia is many times what they call a catch-all disease. When they can't quite figure out what it is, they will put fibromyalgia as a heading for that. But it is also directly related to the amount of white blood cells, the immune system, how the immune system has been hampered. When we deal with your processed sugars, processed flours, pastry, donuts, those types of things, they significantly impact the immune system. And that can cause problems within the interstitial tissue of the body, this is slipping my mind. I'll come back to that, but let's look at some of these testimonies. Diabetic neuropathy, CIPN, arthritis, polyneuropathy. I want to center on one that is not talked about very often. Many times patients who have a cancer diagnosis, there are certain drugs specifically that cause damage to the nerves in the lower extremities and in the fingers. And when we first opened up our clinic, we were looking at diabetic and peripheral neuropathy. But CIPN, chemotherapy-induced peripheral neuropathy, is something that we have been seeing more and more. And we're trying to talk to the doctors, the cancer physicians, to allow the patients to come to us when they first have the symptoms, because many of these medications, they always cause neuropathy. If we can catch them early so that we can open up those blood vessels again and allow the oxygen and the blood to get down to those nerves to keep them from having the severity of the neuropathy, it will allow them to have a more comfortable treatment so that they won't have the pain that they have. I have talked to several patients who have not been out of the house in years because they don't feel comfortable walking, period, because their feet hurt so bad.
One of our call us in a few minutes.
Beg pardon?
You're going to call us in a few minutes.
All right. So as we look at the occlusive diseases, those diseases that are caused because we have ingested too much cholesterol and saturated fat, we want to be able to make conscious decisions. And my wife shared with you today how you can make good food without animal products. So we would ask folks to avail themselves of a better choice of food so that their health can be revived.
Okay, so what we're going to practice is epigenetics, and this is scientific. Our bodies have gone crazy because of choices we've made, but when we go back to God's plan, okay, they're saying we have 5 minutes left. We literally can turn everything in the opposite direction. They've studied it at the National Cancer Institute, and the thing that we have found is phytochemicals. Look up phytochemicals. These are substances in all the food that clean out blood cells, shrink tumors down, get rid of arthritis, all that sort of stuff, and it's only in plant foods. The Bible says the leaves of the tree, they are for the healing of the nation, even as we speak now. All of these foods contain thousands of phytochemicals that work in the body, and scientists did not know they existed. A total plant-based diet is the best diet, especially as you're going through this course for the next 6 weeks. And we are challenging you to decide what you're going to do as we leave our class today. These are some really good antioxidant fruits, keep the crazy relative in control. And these are some really good antioxidant vegetables that do the same thing. And I think the top one is garlic. And I put a lot of the garlic in the dish that we're making. In 2 weeks, 10 days, just like Daniel and the 3 Hebrew boys, they switched the diet of Africans and African Americans. The Africans had no indication of cancer. The African Americans did. They switched the diet, and in 10 days from that day, the Africans now had indications of cancer. The African Americans did not. So we are suggesting that you do what the 3 Hebrew boys did for the next 6 weeks. Am I going to eat less meat, no dairy, more fruits and vegetables, less sugar? Whatever it is you and Jesus are talking about, we want you to be able to do it so that you can have a positive outcome. And everything, whether you eat or drink or what you do, it will be to the glory of God, and you're going to experience improvement. And your doctors are going to have to lessen your medication, and you're going to feel better and look better, and everything is going to be improved in as little as 10 days. And if you continue to do it for the whole period of time, it will happen. This is the decision that I made 26 years ago, July 3 this week is what I did 26 years ago. And literally, it was the hardest thing in the world because I love me some cheese, baby. But when I did the thing that God asked me to do, I got the changes. All right, I want to show you the food because they're going to cut us off in probably 2 minutes.
Please,
we have
yes.
2 minutes left. Karen.
Donna, before you do anything, I want to say the website. It's if you have any questions somehow, it's not being posted on YouTube. They can't see the Gmail. It's ltxclinic@gmail. And you can Google Lifestyle Therapeutics. Please, great information is being posted
Can y'all
there.
see the
Look
scalloped
at that.
potatoes?
I'm on my way over. Plant-based.
Okay. You can do this, y'all. We are praying for you. If you have purchased a course, there are resources inside. There are plenty of recipes there for you. If you need recipes, you can email us. We want you to improve your health and get the results that God intends for you. He will put none of these diseases on you. And this week now, make the decision about how you're going to eat more healthfully. Find a partner who you can be accountable to. Email us if you need us. And next week, we're going to talk about how you can move to improve your health. This looks really good, Karen.
It looks. I smell it over here.
Yeah, can't you smell it?
I smell it.
Oh my goodness.
Again, we enjoyed you. Please, if you have any questions, Google Lifestyle Therapeutics. Here's the information on the screen. You can go back to YouTube and you can view the information. www.lifestyletherapeutics.com, ltxclinic@gmail.com.
It's been an amazing session.
It sure has.
We'll be praying for you this week. We know what God can do. We've done it. We're watching it happen with our patients.
Lock your door. Frida's coming over.
Abundantly.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
67.
Out.
Thank you.
They didn't see the casserole. Lift it up again. Oh, it's showing your screen. Oh, it's too late. They wanted to see the casserole. YouTube didn't see the casserole.
Okay. How many more seconds we got?
38.
Y'all see it now?
No, we don't.
Beautiful. Yes, I see it. Beautiful.
Yeah, but YouTube can't see it. Go back to your picture. 26 seconds. You can do it. Yeah, we see it on Zoom. They don't see it.
Okay.
We'll post the picture to the website. Go to the website. We're sorry.
This meeting is being recorded. The recording has stopped.
Good night, guys.
Good night. See you next week.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.